Welcome to another dose of Teflon and Titanium. I am your host, Scotty G, back at it again. Had a little conversation come up today in our private Facebook group. If you want to join us, it is Marriage Isn't Dead private group on Facebook. I know not many people do Facebook much anymore, but come on in. That's where we all kind of join up. And we talked about prenups today a little bit. And great topic, good stuff, really good back and forth, and a lot of different perspectives. So just want to add my 2 cents here. I know it's not everybody's favorite topic, it's a little heavy, but prenups, they have their place, in my opinion, but not always. Okay, so a lot of people nowadays, especially guys, they have a tendency to be pretty nervous when it comes to marriage and a little bit scared actually of marriage. They don't want to get taken advantage of in the legal system or financially ruined, really, and they get a little worried about it. So I want to go over a couple things where it's good and where it's bad. So let's talk about first marriages first. Now, the kind of people that the statistics say that have the highest chances of having a good marriage and long term is getting married at age 25, highly educated, gainfully employed. These kind of people, they have a tendency to have a pretty low divorce rate, actually. So if you look at the statistics, you always hear the fucking 50% of people get divorced, right, in marriage. Well, that's everybody. That's a big lump. That's everybody who gets married. That could be second marriages. That could be a really terrible marriage. Like, certain people have higher chances of actually staying together. And age 25, highly educated, gainfully employed, those are the people that have a tendency to make it long term on their first marriage. It's actually less than a third actually get divorced if you in that category. So say you're getting married at 25. Typically, you're not going to have a whole lot of assets at that point in your life, unless you grew up with money or you really, really hit something really, really good in your 20s. Typically, people are building their life at that point, and you don't have a whole lot to your name. I, for one, I barely had a pot to piss in at that age. I was broke. I was just getting out of school. My wife and I met in professional school, so we had basically a lot of debt. Okay, we had a lot of debt, is what we had. We started, we had some assets at that point, but when we got married, we didn't have a whole lot. So prenups in that situation, that's not a good thing in my opinion. Okay. So when you when you when you think about having a prenup and you actually push that on your future spouse, that's going to pretty much start you out on a bad note, and it could set the tone of your marriage. And I get why people think that, and they I get it. But if you don't have a whole lot of assets, you don't really need a prenup at that point, because at that point, when you get married and you build a life together, you're going to build your empire together. It's not his and hers at that point. It's us. Okay, it's yours as a collective. I'm a huge fan of merging finances, especially when you first start out. If you're at that age group, you're just getting started out, getting married, that's when a prenup, honestly, in my opinion, is a bad thing. I don't think it's a good idea. It's going to set a bad tone, bad precedents for, it's just not going to be a good base for your marriage. Now, where it comes into play when it's a good thing is in second marriages. Okay, specifically second marriages. Now, in my opinion, right around 8 to 10 years, that seems to be one of the stepping stones when it comes to being married. At that point, it's the people, at least that come to me, or the people that I've seen and I've talked to online and in person. 8 to 10 years is when a lot of a lot of the bad shit will bubble to the surface, You're disconnected because you're nothing but your marriage is just surrounded by the kids. You're always going to activities and you lose connection and bad things happen. Okay. You haven't gone out to eat together in a year. You haven't had sex in a year, that kind of stuff. It's typically right around 8 to 10 years, typically. All right. From what I've seen. I mean, everybody's different. There's always fucking exceptions. I get it. We're talking about bell curves here. We're talking about median and the mean. Okay. That's what I typically see. Now, you get divorced. Okay, so if you're in a marriage that lasted 8 to 10 years, you're going to be right around upper 30s at that point. Okay, at that point, you should have some assets. Okay, so if you're out of a marriage and you've got assets and you start dating someone else, you start getting serious. That's when a prenup would absolutely be appropriate. Okay, that there is nothing wrong with having a prenup at that point. Personally, I'm 46. If my wife, God forbid, something happens to her and I'm on my own and I'm a single dude, there is zero chance of me getting married without having a prenup in place, period. That's just the way it is at my age now that I've accumulated quite a bit of assets. I have a lot more than I did when I was 25, I can tell you that. And that's that's something that I'm not willing to compromise on a prenup at my age at this point. And we're grown-ups. We can talk. Generally speaking, you know, I'm not I'm not going to be looking for a 20-year-old gal to marry. Okay. What the hell would we have to talk about? Okay. If it was that young. So pretty much the person that I would probably marry would be in the neighborhood of about 5 to 6 years younger than me, probably max. Okay. So at that point, you can talk about it. It's all good. That's where a prenup would be totally appropriate. She could have one in place for her too. Say, for instance, you cheat, you get nothing, things like that. Totally appropriate. Totally appropriate in my book. Okay. Now, I know what you're thinking. What it is, prenups get thrown out. Okay. I hear that all the time in the manosphere and the guys that I talk to. Prenups, they get thrown out of court. Yeah, that's true. Shitty prenups get thrown out of court. If you Google search prenup.com and you give somebody online, God knows who it is, $100 to put together a prenup, that's probably not going to hold up in court. Now, if you're a multimillionaire, invest in a fucking prenup. Okay, we're talking 20K, 30K, ironclad. This is how it is. In an event of a really bad event happening in your marriage, you get nothing. Okay. Totally appropriate. Totally appropriate. So I just, when I hear about the people getting, they get butthurt about the fact that prenups get thrown out and then that's always an excuse. Well, cheap prenups get thrown out. If you're talking to an actual attorney that puts together a package for you, that's what I'm talking about. I think that's totally appropriate. So don't get a trash prenup if you go that route. Okay. Get something that's worth your time, worth your money, and something that's solid. So that is totally appropriate. But for first marriages, I do not recommend it at all. I don't think that's a good precedent to set in your marriage, especially when you're younger. It's just that's setting the wrong tone. It's not necessarily a trust thing. I get it for guys who think that they're the one that's working all the time and she's not really doing anything, especially if she stay at home. If she's a stay-at-home mom, yeah, she is doing something. She's actually creating an environment where you can work more and you can earn more. That kind of stuff, when I see that kind of stuff said by dudes where she didn't do anything, she didn't earn it, that's pretty shitty. Okay. It's a we thing. It's an us thing. It's not a he or she thing in marriage. It is you're sharing a life. You're sharing assets. If you have the mentality where what's mine is mine, that is not going to work long term in marriage. Okay. In my opinion, you should merge your accounts when you get married. There is one legal exception I've learned from attorneys that I've spoken to, that if you have child custody, or you have shared custody with an ex-spouse, or even an ex-girlfriend, at that point you should have separate accounts based on your expenses of those children, because the person that you're going to marry that's going to come into your life isn't necessarily financially responsible for the kids that you had with someone else. So in that case, it's a little different, but you should have shared finances. Okay. You can have a separate account based on your child rearing, child expenses, totally appropriate, but you should merge your finances, because when it comes to divorce court, they're going to lump your shit together. It depends on your state. I'm not an attorney. I don't claim to be an attorney, but absolutely, positively, it's an us thing. It's a we thing, not a you or an I thing. Okay. Very, very common thing I see with guys and gals, actually, that the separate finances thing is getting more and more common, and it's getting more and more popular for some reason. And yes, it can work in a marriage, but it's gonna introduce a dynamic that normally wouldn't be there. So who's gonna cover the expenses, the mortgage, the grocery bill, the shit that comes up in marriage in your life? It's gonna create what's mine is mine, what's hers is hers, and you're gonna basically start competing against each other, and it's gonna be a source of resentment that doesn't need to be. So that's why shared finances is a good idea. You do you, like I said, you can do what you want to with your finances, but from what I've seen in my coaching and in life in general, people people with a happy marriage it's a us thing. It's a we thing. It's not a me or I thing, for sure. So just wanted to throw this out here. I know this was kind of a short one, but prenups, very, very hot topic, very polarizing. But I do think that prenups have a place, and they don't have a place. Okay, so basically the bottom line in this little 12-minute thing here is, if you have assets, you need a prenup. If you don't have assets, it's not needed, and it's going to be a negative, most likely, in your marriage. Okay, so it's going to start out on a negative note. Okay, so why take any more chances? Marriage, it's it's a beautiful thing, but it is not easy. No one says marriage is easy, and why make it harder? Okay, so until next time, see y'all, and be desirable.